The final Indiana Jones movie just hit theaters, and we are just here to talk about what we thought of the movie.
I've been looking for this all my life.
Trevor is the biggest Indiana Jones fan that I know, one of the most iconic characters of all time. I'm very curious what he thought.
I love Indiana Jones so much, I moved to Indiana. That's how much of a fan I am. I also love Harrison Ford, so it also goes together because they happen to be the same people. I think all the Indiana Jones movies are good. 1, 2, 3, 4, and let me tell you what, 5 is good too. I liked it.
Well, in that case, what are we drinking?
I love this as being the final installment as Indiana Jones / Harrison Ford.
I'm retiring.
Just because I know Harrison loves this part so much, as well as all of us fans. Sent it out on a good note. It was nice to see him just dressed up again and going through the adventure again. That part was very nice, and I thought James Mangold did a good job.
Our filmmaker friend Dylan Young, shout out, described this on social media the other day as more action than adventure. And once I heard that, I was like, that was exactly my problem.
Yep.
I like the movie. I really like the first hour. I think the second hour is a bit up and down. And then, depending on who you are, the last half hour is either going to make it or break it.
Yeah.
And I thought they landed that. I was in. I liked it.
Yeah, I initially was pretty disappointed overall. I was having a good time with it. The only expectation being I love Harrison Ford. I enjoy these movies, and I'm glad he got the chance to make one when he was basically 80 years old. People out there seem to think that that is a not good thing, but I don't think we do this too often, and I think it's really important showcasing an iconic character aging and dealing with the reality of time. I think that's pretty cool. The general concept, I don't know why people seem to be really lukewarm on all these coming old and they get mad at them for being old characters that aren't superheroes because they're technically still real people, even though Indiana Jones does some wild stuff in this movie, even though he's still, an old man.
Those days have come and gone.
It's not like this isn't necessarily rendered in nonfiction space, but you get my point. I thought about it more, and I did ultimately think I liked it, even though it's nowhere near the level of the first three. And I do think that it is technically not as good as Crystal Skull. I'm not as big on Crystal Skull as these two are because they are just fanboy to the max on it, to the point where it's almost on every time I come over. At least for a certain period of time it was.
We are what you might call Crystal Skull truthers.
Yes.
That movie is good.
I thought it was pretty good.
It's a Steven Spielberg movie.
The last hour is utter nonsense, but you know what? Fun. It moves.
Why?
I do have fonder memories of the Crystal Skull set pieces and just different things about the cast and just kind of ideas that it had in there, even though obviously it has some more out there ideas that divided the fandom of this franchise.
Oh God, what have they done?
This one does similar stuff. It could divide some people, but also I do feel like it ends on a better note in terms of tributing the franchise. Seems like you all feel that way too,
Yeah.
even though you all like Skull better, right?
Here's the thing. There are stuff in that movie that is moronic. I can't deny that. The big ants, the waterfalls, the fridge. We've heard it all.
Do you remember that scene with Indiana in the refrigerator? It didn't make any sense then.
Whatever. That said, that thing moves. The opening, incredible stuff. I think the last hour, as dumb as it gets, it zips. I think this movie isn't nearly as silly. Give or take the last 30 minutes.
Perhaps not.
This is maybe a better movie. I just think it lacks the Spielberg zippiness.
Yeah.
Because each of those movies get in and out in either 2 hours or 2 hours and 5 minutes, and this bloody thing was 2.5 hours, and I did feel it. And it's not like it's ever dull, it's just not the same, you know?
I get what they were doing with the opening, but I really don't think the whole de-aging thing looked good. And some people have said that this is some of the best use of it, but it took me out of the movie just especially because the audio didn't really match up with his face and everything.
That's where I'm at. I think it looks good. It's just, you can tell that that's 80-year-old Harrison Ford.
That's not the end of the world, but whenever you spend as much time as they do at the beginning of it, you're kind of like,
Good 20 minutes.
yeah, they could have definitely cut it down. And all they were really doing is just like, hey, this is going to be a juxtaposition for when we cut to him when he's old, which is cool, but it just took a really long time. I feel like, I don't know.
You're introduced to like Helena's dad, you're introduced to the MacGuffin, you're introduced to the villain. Could have just been something that's mentioned in passing leading up to it, but I still thought it looked cool. It was old-fashioned enough to where I was like, okay. Minus, of course, the de-aging, which is like very not old-fashioned.
It is longer, and that kind of takes away from like the serial nature of these movies, where they kind of just feel like episodes of quick, indie TV show you're watching, and it goes through an adventure and then you move on. That's what all these things are based off of. You do have like a extended 25-minute like opening sequence, which takes place in the past. I think if they just cut all of that out, and they just use the de-aging that's used later on in the film for flashbacks to explain a little bit with Toby Jones' character. If they just did that and we got the backstory that we needed to just through context clues and stuff, just like we did in Raiders of the Lost Ark. When Marion and him are talking about past relationship they had, we didn't need to see them as young people being in a relationship and then also see them talking about it today. We could have just saw just them talking about it and then we just see the flashbacks. I think that would have made the movie a little bit faster and probably just better.
It needs a little more humor for my money, at least. This is my main gripe. It needs a little more of Indiana Jones needs to solve a thing to unlock a thing that will open a thing.
Yeah.
Like there's not quite enough puzzle in it for my Indiana Jones movie. Like even Crystal Skull, again, silly AF.
There's puzzles. There's not enough puzzles in Indiana Jones 5, I think. But I will say, when it does get to the end and they get to the last part of the movie, I just looked over and I was like, are we doing this? And I was like, we're doing this? And I was smiling the whole time. I was like, I cannot believe this is going on and this is happening. And I thought that part was fun. And I do really enjoy the ending of Indiana Jones 5 more than Indiana Jones Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I think the ending is great.
Now, a final triumph.
I left the movie smiling, which, as people can attest, is a rare sight.
At the same time, I just feel like there were great parts of that with the whole reunion they have at the end. I just feel like they could have had a better like final shot. They could have had a better couple tense, 10-minute kind of ending kind of thing. I don't know. But I don't dislike it. They did what they were going to do with it. I do think it could have been better.
I do too. And I mean, you do get what you pay for. Maybe my fear was when Mangold signed on to it, there was talk like, oh, this will be like Logan, but Indiana Jones. And I was like, Logan, incredible movie. But no, different tone.
We don't need a rated R Indiana Jones.
In a way it is. Like in its own way about like the passage of time and like everything he's experienced and how like all the people he's lost and all the things he's done. And this is a series that's over 40 years old. It's crazy. Harrison Ford was 40 when the first movie came out. I might be wrong. Maybe he's 39.
He was like 38 or something.
That's wild because how does somebody look that good at 39? Nonetheless, I was glad that it ended on a nice touch.
Like it wasn't bad, It's just I don't know. I just feel like in a series as iconic as this, they could have had I don't know, just a nice shot to look at. I know they do the thing with the hat and they do that little circle in and out, which is cute, but I don't know. I just I don't know. I love the themes though, but like they don't necessarily drive home the themes throughout the entire movie like you could have. But I really do think it is cool that it's like, hey, the MacGuffin is a thing that can go back in time kind of vibes. And then it's like, hey, we're dealing with time and the changing of the time from, the late 30s and the First World War. And then you're going to like, hey, we landed on the moon. Oh my gosh, it's the 60s. It's happening. We're moving on. We're moving forward without you, old buddy. You did all that stuff that related to the past. Good for you, man. We are going into the future. I do like all that stuff. And I think the best part of the movie was the horse like the police horse chase with perfect job of like throwback vibe of Indy while setting it, in present day. Hey, I'm at this age and we're in the setting that's different than the other movies. I enjoyed that. Yeah.
I do think the action set pieces are good, even if some of them may go on a bit. And you get Harrison Ford and you got the John Williams. I think it's really the last 30 minutes that sold me on it. Maybe we'll dive into that. I don't know if that's something
Yeah.
we want to discuss.
Real quick, we'll just go through ratings and just general thing, and then we'll talk about what happens at the very end, which I'm sure would be an interesting conversation. I'll give this a 6 out of 10. I kind of got a vibe that I was going to rate it lower after I'd seen it because I was a little disappointed. But, I mean, the themes and stuff are pretty good ultimately. And the more I sat with it, I was like, you know what? This isn't bad. It's nice to have this a parting gift for the Indiana Jones franchise and get to see Harrison Ford go out and do his thing.
I give it a 7 out of 10. I think Mangold's a director I've really liked for a long time. He's not Spielberg. And that's kind of the problem. Spielberg knows how to make these properly. But I do think Mangold does a good job, and I had a good time. It's not quite there, but for me, it's there enough.
I also rated this a 7 out of 10. I like this movie, but it's definitely my least favorite out of all of them. Felt like I was watching an Indiana Jones movie, but the thing about Steven Spielberg in the first four is he kind of makes you feel like you're along with the ride. Oh, like the first, second, third, and even the fourth one, the camera moves and just like the set pieces and the editing, all of it just feels like you're just a part of the adventure. That's why they're so rewatchable. But the thing about this one, it felt like I was watching an Indiana Jones movie and I was like watching set pieces and stuff like that. I do not know how to describe it. It's just I guess it's a Steven Spielberg thing.
So basically, yes, there will be a super spoiler here, and you've probably already seen this movie, or if you haven't, you have turned off this video because we have talked about this movie for probably 10 minutes by now. Here's this part of the video. Yeah, so they time travel at the end of this movie. Sorry. And it seems like y'all dug it. And at first I was like, what the actual shit is going on? And I was just kind of in the theater being like, looking around like, did they really just do this? Like, what is happening? But, I mean, yeah, it was kind of cool, honestly, in hindsight. And when you think about the other movies, there is some wild-ass shit that happens at the end of all these movies. I get that you could get into semantics argument with time travel being slightly different than some of those things, but I don't really care at this point because this is the movie, you know, as a send-off for an 80-year-old Harrison Ford, and it goes with the themes of the movie, so I'm fine with it. He talks to Archimedes. It's cool.
That's right. It honestly reminded me a little of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Among everything that people bitch about with Crystal Skull, the aliens, you know?
Why aliens? Aliens don't belong in an Indiana Jones movie.
They did it. They did the aliens. And even, like, I remember days passed after I first saw that movie, and I was like, wow, yeah, they did that. It is pretty nutty, but all of these movies end on a bonkers note.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the last 30 minutes, I was like, I kind of need something crazy. Or else I'm like, this may lack personality. And then they landed the plane. Quite literally. Running around, shooting, you know, whatever those giant arrow things are.
Basilisks.
Thank you. It's absolutely absurd. But none of these movies are grounded in reality. So I was like, okay, you know what? This is the one where he traveled back in time.
I think you make a good point with that in terms of it making it stand out a little more and not be as run-of-the-mill kind of earlier what you were saying about the action versus adventure aspect. So I feel like that gives us some more of the adventure aspect and makes it an actual adventure in the end, which they pay off with, you know, the Karen Allen reunion, the Marion reunion at the end and stuff like that.
This movie, they tell you up front, there is a chance this thing will take you back in time. And so you're just kinda, sorta waiting for it to do it. And Mads Mikkelsen, who, again, that's another name I don't even think I've said, he says that he wants to go back in time to kill Hitler so then he could make things his own way, essentially. And then he ends up taking them way back. I thought it was just, again, ridiculous, but they all are.
Yeah.
A man's heart was pulled out of his chest, and then he was dropped into a vat of lava. He's still alive and screaming. People's faces melt off.
I really like the time travel stuff, and I like at the end when Mads Mikkelsen is like, I don't know if the calculations are correct, and Indiana Jones is like, I don't know where we're going, but it sure as hell ain't 1939. And then when he said that, I was like, where are we going? And then we came out, and it was like Mads Mikkelsen thought he was right because it looked like Syracuse, and I was like, oh, okay, it's not that crazy. And then they start to see the boats and all that stuff, and my heart was just very happy. I was like, holy moly, they went for it. Crazy. It's absolutely nuts. I'm glad he didn't die in the BC era.
That should be mentioned. So he is shot at this point, and he pretty much feels as if he has nothing to live for because Marion, played by Karen Allen, has left him, and Mutt, who was played by Shia LaBeouf, went to war and died despite him. And so he's pretty much all alone. And he's just like, I'm going to stay here. My whole life is built up to this, and I'm going to die. Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character is like, are you out of your mind?
Right across.
And then she knocks him out.
Did you like the Mutt conversation?
Yeah, like I
really
mean,
like
you
that
could break your
monologue.
fourth wall a little bit and get cynical about it, but yeah, I mean, Harrison Ford delivered it like Harrison Ford can deliver things, so it worked for me.
It was
Like
good.
you felt
I
it,
loved
and
it.
it was probably the most emotion in the movie,
I
other
would have
than
told my
maybe at
son
the
he was going to die.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
other than maybe at the end with him getting back with Marion and them doing the well, does this hurt kind of thing. It really gave the movie, furthered the themes and stuff.
I didn't know how they were going to go about the Shia LaBeouf thing. There was no way that Shia LaBeouf was A, going to do this movie, and B, there was no way that anybody really wanted him there. Like, I mean, it would have been fine, but like, I don't know.
He wouldn't have got the job.
I don't think so. I thought that was actually like tastefully done. Marion comes back, and she is just willing to make things fine again. They have a subtle nod to the original movie that I thought was really sweet.
I think that the Mutt stuff, what worked about it is it kind of covers up for some people's earlier complaints about the movie, where they were kind of getting scared about what this movie was going to be, where they were like, oh, he's divorced, they took my childhood hero and made him a sad old man who is a failure kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like with that addition, it is a pretty justifiable reason of how that could happen. And it was also pretty heavily implied that it was, Indiana Jones' decision versus Marion's decision on to part ways.
Yeah, it can really age a person. And they did a great job.
And it was like for Crystal Skull, him and Marion were very much like in and out, kind of like, oh, we're doing this or we're not doing this. And, they get back with Raiders. But then Last Crusade happens, and, he's obviously with a Nazi spy in that one, not Marion.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's not like they were always destined to like, have to be together in every movie kind of a vibe. And I get that they do get married at the end of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but that's why the Mutt thing actually works pretty well for me, because it gives a very good justifiable reason as to why Indy is not with Marion in this.
Yeah.
And I think it really does ground it.
Also, the fact that 15 years has passed since the release of that movie, like, in real time, like, it'd be one thing if they made Crystal Skull and then, like, 3 years later they made this movie and you'd be like, what? But, like, the fact that all this time has passed and all this has happened to him and he's, like, on the verge of retirement and he's alone, works.
And I know that some people don't like emotion in their Indiana Jones movies, but if it's the fifth and final Indiana Jones movie, they should probably have a little bit of an emotional nod.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But
it's okay to pluck a
debate
heartstring
that,
when you get to the end of a franchise that's been going for
Indiana
4
Jones,
decades.
It occurred to me, we haven't even said the name Phoebe Waller-Bridge yet.
I liked her.
I did too. It took me a minute.
I still like Mutt more, but that's just because I'm a crazy
You
person.
like Mutt more?
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked Mutt more.
I probably did too. I was cool with her. I've preferred the best is either Marion or Sean Connery.
Oh, Sean Connery's the best.
Sean Connery's got to be the best.
He's the best.
Ke Kwan is awesome. Short round.
Yeah, he is.
Short round's the go-to guy. Let's not.
Willie's in it a lot though, so it's like
I used to find Willie.
it's Willie and the kid interact a lot
She's
too.
in the entire movie.
I know, but short round's the main one. As stupid as it is, I was a little disappointed that he wasn't shoehorned in this movie. I know people would have been complaining about it and would have been upset either way if they did it. But I would have liked my cake and I would have eaten it gladly. But Sala was kind of cool, and he had a pretty poignant line,
Gonna say.
longing for adventure, and he delivered it really well. And I felt that justified the vibe of it. I know
Yeah.
some people get mad at the stuff lately, but it's like it's a fun movie, and let it have some fun every now and then.
Give 'em hell, Indiana Jones!
You know?
When they finally started to travel, and I was really hoping they were going to find their way to Kehu Kwan, and he was going to help them somehow. It was just going to be really cute and awesome and funny. But yeah, because as we can see, Kehu Kwan is still very funny, and Harrison Ford is still very funny. I could have bumped this up a whole nother star. I don't even know. I was really hoping for it. I wasn't holding my breath, but yeah.
Let us know what you all thought of the movie. Did you have complaints with it like a lot of people tend to be having? Or did you think it was a nice send-off and you're of that vibe where you're just like, hey, I got to see an indie movie in theaters. I like the Harrison Ford fella. And I got to take my kids to see this. Or, you know, I got to finally grow up and see one of these in theaters after seeing them as kids, which are all valid feelings. So share those below. Like the video if you enjoyed our conversation. Subscribe if you want to see more. See you in the next video.
Just like Harrison Ford punches a Nazi, how about you punch that subscribe button? And how about you crack that whip on a like?
Sorry.
Get back!